This is probably the only video you'll see. Maybe not, because I may transfer some of the real-time video conversations over to this space if we find that useful over time. But for now, the majority of the course is audio. I want you to be able to listen. I want you to be able to do it while you are um, engaged in other things that allow you to take in the information even more deeply than you could if you just like try to sit and give it all your attention. I love that about audio. And it's a huge part of why I decided that most of this course, from Schoolish to self directed, would be audio based. This part, though, I decided to do video because I wanted to be eye to eye as much as we could to talk about getting started. I believe that most people who grab this course, one of the things that you're doing is transitioning from a more schoolish mindset, a more conventional approach to learning and relating to a child in your life. And so the big question, maybe one of the biggest questions, is how do I get started? What do I stop doing? What do I start doing? What is this transition process? So I'm going to offer you three things that I find super relevant to this transitional stage. Okay. The first thing is that we try to fill the void. If they're not in school, or if I'm not giving them specific things to do with specific deadlines, here's what I'm going to give them to do instead. So the first thing is, don't fill voids that aren't there. Before we decide that it's a void, we got to observe it. What happens? That's the first thing. The first curriculum that you need to be focused on, and the only one, is for you, not for your child. When I stop giving this level of detailed instruction or directives or objectives, what happens? Because without that information, anything else that you do is super schoolish. It's along the lines of deciding that you know better than the child, or that your need to see a certain type of learning is more important than what might organically develop if they have, or when they have more time to explore things themselves. Okay. So the first thing is, don't go filling a void that isn't there. And the way you avoid filling the void is by observing. Make the first curriculum item for you. I will observe. If I only, for example, give them one thing that they need to accomplish each day, because I'm not ready to just give them nothing. If I only give them one thing and I just back up in terms of control for how they get it done or exactly what it looks like, what are they doing with the rest of their time, and how do I feel about that? That's plenty of work. It's going to give you an opportunity to assess your feelings, to look at the specific things that trigger you, or if you already know them, to examine them more deeply, right? These really important aspects of learning yourself as you transition into a different type of relationship with your child or children. The second thing I'll offer is partnership work. Ask yourself this question at least twice a day: when you first wake up, and maybe somewhere in the middle of the day. How can I be a better partner to this child? Right? So if you have multiple children, for each child, you ask that question. Don't make it a blanket thing to say better partner to these children, because we want to make it specific to each child. It's going to vary. What it calls for is going to vary. What you have to give is going to vary. And all of that needs honest assessment. To ask the question about becoming a better partner is also to ask the question about, what are the ways that I'm not showing up as a good partner? And the easiest way to find that out, that I've learned, is to ask the child, to talk about the fact that you're transitioning, even if they're 3 years old, to talk about the fact that you want to transition into more self-directed learning, something where they are managing their time and their learning more directly, and that you learn how to support them. So you're asking them about partnership. One child might think that partnership looks like you being available more to watch things with them, to read things with them, to play things with them, to discuss things with them. You need that information. Another child might need you to be around less. They might just want the space to explore, and partnership looks like them knowing that you trust them to explore, and that you trust that when you check in, that you check in with them directly to ask them how things are going, to ask them what they're getting into. You're trusting that they're going to give you honest answers, and that they're going to pay attention to how you respond. They're going to pay attention to um, the way you give them feedback about what's going on. So for example, if it's a child who is on screens a lot and you're still transitioning from having anxiety around screen time, that's okay. You might explain that to them and say, yeah, I was really frustrated, and I noticed that when I saw you playing the game, usually I would come in and talk to you about it, but I decided not to. And I instead did some research about XYZ, and it didn't make me feel any better, but at least I didn't come in here to talk to you. And, I wanted you to know that I was working on it. Those sort of things that you might not think is relevant to your child, for some children, it's very relevant. And even if they respond from a place of what might seem like apathy, that's trust building. That's them trusting you to do your work while you are learning them, while they are learning them, while you are both deschooling from ideas of how they should show up and how you should show up. It's important to name the work you're doing and to let a child know in ways that make sense for that child, which is something that only you can assess. I can't tell you how to do it. But as you continue to do that, that is a way that you build trust muscles. So really the second one could also be called look out for opportunities to build your trust muscles. Yes. Yes, we'll call it that one. So the first one is to make sure that you're not filling voids that aren't there. And the second one is to look out for opportunities to build trust muscles. And the third one I'll offer is to get all up in other unschooling families' business. Okay. I started Fear of the Free Child podcast, which is specifically about getting up in people's business who unschool and embrace other forms of sovereignty when it comes to being in relationship intergenerationally. For me, the podcast was a very selfish thing because I wanted to know how other people were doing it. What were some of the things that they were facing? How did they deal with um, certain types of anxiety? Um, how did they move past shit that felt insurmountable to them? How did they handle discipline issues? How did they handle math issues? All the basic questions that I had when Chris and I first got started with liberation work for Marley and Sage in the way of their learning and really listening to them. A lot of those questions that I had, I didn't have community to really feel through those answers. And so our transition period was really long. We did a lot of schoolish things years in. And a part of why I'm doing this course is because I'm so clear from my own experiences and all the people I get to meet through the podcast that you ain't got to have no long transitional phase. If you do, it's okay. But perhaps it's not only unnecessary, but perhaps it's even harmful when you prolong it, because you yourself, I'm talking to us, the adults here, because we ourselves are deschooling at such a slow pace that the pace is okay for us, but it gets in the way for a child day after day, moment after moment. And so when you are in a place of being in community with other people, even if it's just listening to them, taking in their stories, even if you're not talking back to them, live or in a Facebook group or whatever, taking that in can be really wonderful for your own deschooling journey in a way that allows you to back up and for your child to show up so you can observe the way they're showing up. And that will often give you the permission and the specific ways that you can start to show up more as a partner and less as a power over figure in a child's life. you can reframe what power means for you and each child in your life when you are in a position to connect with other people and hear how they do it and shortcut, collaborate, cheat off their paper and allow them to cheat off yours. That is the sort of thing that happens when you allow yourself to be in community. And so that is all I'm going to offer you for getting started, right? So ditch the curriculum. Maybe that's another one. If you have a curriculum that you're like, all right, I'm going to ease out of this one or ease into that one, ditch it as much as possible. Okay. Maybe all the way, or maybe 80%. We're transitioning, so we're going to offer it some space, but minimize the required things, maximize the observation, question every time you think there's a void that needs to be filled, and be in community with other people as much as you can, as often as you can, to feed those questions that are inevitably going to come up. Okay? So enjoy the audio, feel into it, please. Don't just listen, feel into it, and post questions. I'm very much open to those and looking forward to hearing those. And thank you for being here. Peace and love.